Hello students, today we are going to start the chapter Elements, Compounds and Mixtures of class 7. Now before we start the chapter Elements, Compounds and Mixtures, you need to know that these are three different things: elements, compounds and mixtures. And as it is new to you in class 7, we will be discussing each of them in detail. So let us begin with elements. You have seen a lot of things around you. For example, you might have observed the pen that you are using, or sand around in your playground, and many such things. Almost everything around us is different kind of substances. So what is an element then? An element is a pure substance that cannot be converted into simpler substance by any physical or chemical process. For example, when I say this, that element is a pure substance which cannot be converted, what does it mean? For example, if I talk about gold, if I keep dividing gold into smaller and smaller pieces, I still get gold. So I can say that gold is a element. Or for example, if I talk about hydrogen, hydrogen is a gas, and the smallest part of it, the hydrogen, is nothing but the hydrogen atom. So hydrogen is also an element. An element is a pure substance. Now why we are telling it a pure substance? Because it has only one kind of substance in it. And generally there are two categories, pure and impure substance. When I say impure substance, then it will be one or more pure substance mixed together in any proportion. The topics that we are discussing, that is elements and compounds, they are coming under the category of pure substances. Now, the smallest particle that is making up an element is known as an atom. So the smallest part of any element that we will talk about will be made up of the particle called atom. There are many subatomic parts also, which we will not be discussing now. So when we talk about elements, you know that elements are made up of atom. And there are around 118 elements which have been identified so far. 92 to 94 of them are naturally occurring, and around 26 and even more are being developed synthetically. And then what are the examples of elements? When we speak of elements, we can say that oxygen, chlorine, carbon, sulfur, aluminum, all these are examples of elements. So elements are what? They are pure substances which cannot be converted into simpler substances by any chemical process or any physical process. And elements are arranged in a structured manner in a table which is called the periodic table. You can refer and find out about periodic table. You will see it's a structured table where the elements are arranged according to their atomic numbers. And the periodic table was first created by Dmitri Mendeleev, a Russian chemist. Now let us discuss about the symbols of element. How are we representing the elements? We are representing the elements by using symbol. It is nothing but the standard abbreviation, or you can say a short form of writing or representing an element. So what are the rules? There are certain rules, or you can say there are different ways how we name an element. Like for the first letter, generally the first letter of the name of the element is written in the capital letter, and that is how we can represent an element. Like you might have seen hydrogen is represented as H, carbon is represented as C, oxygen is represented as O. So the first letter of the element's name is taken as a symbol. Sometimes if the names of two or more elements which start with the same letter, then two letters are used to form the symbol where the second letter is written in small letter. Like suppose bromine and barium, or bromine which can be represented as Br, and barium, because both are starting with B, I can't write B, so I am writing Br for bromine and Ba for barium. Again, suppose if the first two letters are same, then we can take some other letter to make the symbol of the element. Like magnesium and manganese, both start with a Ma. So I can represent magnesium as Mg and manganese as Mn. Similarly, some elements symbols are actually derived from their Latin name. Like iron, we write iron as Fe because it is derived from its Latin name ferrum. Sodium is written as Na, which is coming from natrium, its Latin name. So these are certain ways how the symbols of elements are made. We move on to our next topic, the classification of elements. Now, as you can see, we can have the elements divided into four main categories. They are metals, non-metals, metalloids, and inert gases. Now, what are metals? They are generally the solids, and they are good conductors of electricity. Their boiling point and melting point is high. You might have read in the lower classes also, like in class 6, about metals and non-metals. So iron, copper, silver, aluminium, all these are examples of metals. Then comes the non-metals, which are bad conductors of electricity. They are mostly gases, brittle solids, and they have low melting and boiling points, like carbon, sulfur, nitrogen, and oxygen, and many others. And then metalloid. The metalloids are the substances or elements which are having the property of metals as well and non-metals, and they are generally hard solids which are mostly used as semiconductors, like boron, silicon, germanium, etc. And then we have the inert gases, which are the unreactive gases because they generally do not react with any of the substances and they belong to a separate group completely. So they are the inert gases, or as we call them, the noble gases: helium, argon, neon, and radon. So I will like to tell again, the classification of elements can be broadly done into four classes, like metals, non-metals, metalloid, and the inert or noble gases. This classification is generally based on their properties. Then we move to the next topic, that is compounds. What is a compound? Now, if you have understood about the elements, you know that in chemistry, the different elements, they combine together in a fixed proportion to form the compounds. So we can say a compound is a chemical which is made up of two or more elements combined chemically in a fixed proportion. Please see or note that fixed proportion is important. Compounds are always mixed chemically in a fixed proportion. They are generally pure substances because, again, the reason being that they are mixed in a fixed proportion, they are called the pure substance. They are formed by different chemical reactions, and when these reactions happen, they may release or absorb the energy. And mostly the properties of these elements are completely being changed when they form the compounds. So the compounds' properties are completely different from their elements' property. For example, if I say water, water is a compound made up of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen are gases, but generally water is a liquid. So you see that the property is completely changing. And how do we represent the compounds? We represent the compound with the help of the chemical formulae. So it's a short way or a short form of representing the compounds. Like for example, I have written some chemical formulas here, like sodium chloride or common salt, that is NaCl. So you know the elements found in it is sodium and chlorine. Similarly, carbon dioxide, it is made up of carbon and oxygen. Ammonia, it is made up of nitrogen and hydrogen. And calcium sulfate, which is made up of calcium and sulfur and oxygen. So using the chemical formula, we will be representing the molecules of a compound. So in this module, you have learnt about elements, the different categories of elements, and what are compounds and what is a chemical formula. I hope you have understood the related topics. Please do like, share and comment which part was the best for you or which part you understood better. Thank you.